You hear them coming, heavy boots echoing up stone stairs in the dead of night. You're sleeping beside your son, your hand resting on his small chest, feeling each breath. You haven't let him out of your sight since they murdered his father 6 months ago. The door explodes open. 6 men flood into the darkness, holding papers, shouting orders. They've come for your child. You throw yourself between them and the boy, and what happens next will last 1 hour, 60 minutes of primal animal terror. A mother fighting with everything she has left. But this isn't random violence. This is calculated. They've discovered your one remaining vulnerability, and they're about to weaponize it in ways that will make death seem merciful. Before we go deeper into this story, I'm genuinely curious where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how a tragedy from 1793 can still reach across centuries and continents to grip us today. This is July 3rd, 1793. Inside the Temple prison in Paris, the woman is Marie Antoinette, former Queen of France, now prisoner number 280. And what the revolutionaries are about to do to her over the next 76 days represents one of history's most methodical campaigns of psychological destruction. They didn't just want her dead, they wanted her broken first, systematically, completely, using the thing she loved most as the instrument of her torment. The blade would be mercy. What came before was something far darker. Marie Antoinette wasn't born for tragedy. She was born Maria Antonia, an Austrian archduchess, the youngest daughter of the formidable Empress Maria Theresa. At 14 years old, she was shipped to France like a diplomatic package, married to the awkward Dauphin Louis Auguste to seal an alliance between two empires that had spent centuries trying to destroy each other. The French court hated her immediately. She was Austrian, the ancestral enemy. She spoke French with a thick accent. She didn't understand their elaborate rituals and Byzantine politics. Her own husband, shy and withdrawn, avoided her for years. Their marriage wasn't consummated until 7 years in, a humiliation whispered about in every salon across Europe. So she did what any isolated, desperately lonely teenager might do. She escaped into excess. Elaborate hairstyles that towered 3 feet high, adorned with ships and gardens, gowns that cost a fortune, late-night card games and masked balls at her private estate, the petty Trianon. The French people, starving and desperate, watched from outside the Golden Gates and branded her Madame Deficit. Did she actually say, "Let them eat cake," when told the peasants had no bread? No, that's propaganda, recycled from earlier queens and pinned on her because it fit the narrative. But once a story takes root, truth becomes irrelevant. By 1789, when revolution erupted like a fever across France, Marie Antoinette had become the nation's most convenient scapegoat. She was foreign, she was female, she was visible. Everything wrong with the monarchist centuries of oppression, starvation, inequality was compressed into one person and one image. The Austrian woman in silk, while children died in gutters. But here's what matters. By 1793, that frivolous girl was gone. In her place stood a mother of 4 who'd watched her eldest son die of tuberculosis at age 7. She'd held her husband's hand before they dragged him to the scaffold. She'd spent months imprisoned with her surviving children, 14-year-old Marie-Therese and 8-year-old Louis Charles, teaching them lessons, praying with them, holding them through the night when the sound of mob violence rattled the walls. Her hair had started turning white from stress, a condition that would later bear her name, Marie Antoinette syndrome, when trauma bleaches color from hair in a matter of weeks. She'd already lost everything: her crown, her freedom, her husband, her country. The revolutionaries were about to teach her she could lose more. The Temple prison was a medieval fortress, dark and oppressive, built by the Knights Templar centuries before. After Louis XVI's execution in January 1793, Marie Antoinette and her children were locked in a tower, guarded constantly. At first, they were kept together. She tried desperately to maintain some fragment of normal life lessons, prayers, bedtime stories, but the guards watched, always watching, taking notes, reporting back to the Committee of Public Safety, the revolutionary government that now controlled France with an iron fist. And they noticed something crucial. Marie Antoinette could endure anything: starvation, humiliation, threats except harm to her children. They began experimenting with psychological torture. First, restricting her access to the children's rooms, forcing her to beg for permission to see her own son and daughter. Then installing additional guards inside their quarters, men who sat in corners, staring, recording every conversation, every moment of affection. The children weren't allowed to speak German, their mother's native language. Even private family moments were monitored, controlled, weaponized by the state. Marie Antoinette was unraveling. Her hair, now completely white, fell out in clumps. She developed severe hemorrhaging, likely uterine cancer, accelerated by stress, and had to hide bloodied rags from the guards who watched her every moment. But she held on. She still had her children. Until that night in July, when they came for Louis Charles. The boy is 8 years old, small for his age, with his mother's auburn hair and his father's gentle eyes. When the guards burst in, he wakes confused, still half dreaming. Marie Antoinette grabs him and holds him so tightly he starts crying. She's screaming not elegant royal objections, but raw animal sounds. "You will not take him. You will have to kill me first. He is just a child." The guards try reasoning. They have orders from the highest authority. She doesn't care. For 1 full hour 60 minutes, documented in trial records, she physically blocks the doorway, her body between them and her son. The guards threaten her. They threaten the boy. They threaten her daughter, Marie Therese, who's sobbing in the next room. They say if she doesn't comply, they'll use force and people will get hurt. Finally, her sister-in-law, Madame Elizabeth, begs her to stop. The child is terrified. The violence is escalating. Marie Antoinette's resistance shatters. She kisses Louis Charles one final time, whispers something in his ear that history will never know, and watches 6 grown men drag her 8-year-old son down the tower stairs. His screams echo until they fade into silence. She collapses and doesn't move for hours. But the cruelty doesn't end there. It's only beginning. The revolutionaries give Louis Charles to a man named Antoine Simon, a radical cobbler specifically chosen to re-educate the boy. Simon locks the child in a dark, windowless room. He forces him to wear a red revolutionary cap and sing anti-monarchist songs. He teaches him to curse his mother, to call her traitor, whore, criminal. When Louis Charles refuses, Simon beats him, starves him, keeps him in isolation. The psychological torture of an 8-year-old child, methodical and relentless. Within weeks, Louis Charles is repeating everything they tell him, including accusations so monstrous they would be weaponized against his mother in the most devastating way imaginable. Marie Antoinette doesn't know the details, but she knows her son is suffering, and there's nothing she can do to save him. The knowledge gnaws at her like acid. Her daughter Marie Therese later wrote that her mother stopped speaking for days at a time, staring at walls, whispering her son's name. Louis Charles, Louis Charles. Then, on August 1st, 1793, less than a month after they took her son, guards burst into her room at 2 in the morning. No explanation, no warning, just an order: you're being transferred. She begs to say goodbye to her daughter. They refuse. They drag her down the stairs, throw her into a carriage, and drive her through dark Paris streets to a place called the Conciergerie. If you know anything about the French Revolution, you know this name. The Conciergerie was called the antechamber to the guillotine. It's where prisoners spent their final days before execution. Marie Antoinette wasn't just being moved. She was being prepared for death. Her cell is tiny, maybe 12 by 8 feet. Damp stone walls covered in mold, a thin straw mattress, a wooden table, 2 chairs, a chamber pot, 1 candle for light, no windows, just suffocating medieval darkness. She's assigned prisoner number 280, not the former queen, not even her name, just a number. Here's the truly insidious part. They give her a privacy screen. A folding screen so she can change clothes or use the chamber pot away from prying eyes. Sounds humane, doesn't it? It's theater, because inside that cell, at all times, sit 2 armed guards. They watch her every single moment. When she eats, when she sleeps, when she changes clothes behind that useless screen, when she uses the chamber pot, when she prays, when she cries. This isn't about security. She's a middle-aged woman in failing health, locked in a dungeon. This is psychological torture, designed to strip away her last shred of dignity and privacy. Historical accounts describe how Marie Antoinette tries to maintain composure. She sits for hours staring at walls, her face blank. The guards report she barely speaks, barely moves, barely eats. But at night, when she thinks they can't see in the candlelight, they hear her crying, whispering her son's name over and over. She's bleeding through her clothes from the hemorrhaging. She has to ask guards for rags, enduring this humiliation in front of men who stare without mercy. Her hair, now completely white, continues falling out. She's 37 years old. She looks 60. And then comes the trial. October 14th, 1793, 8 o'clock in the morning. Marie Antoinette is dragged from her cell to the Revolutionary Tribunal. This isn't justice. This is performance. The verdict is already decided, but the revolutionaries need a show, something to justify her execution to the public and to history. The courtroom is packed with revolutionary officials, journalists, citizens, eager to see the former queen humiliated one last time. The prosecutor, Antoine Fouquetinville, prepares charges of treason, conspiracy with foreign powers, financial corruption. Marie Antoinette sits in the defendant's chair, pale and gaunt, dressed in widow's black. For 2 days, they throw accusations at her. She responds with startling composure and intelligence, refuting false claims, admitting mistakes without groveling, refusing to be broken. So Fouquetinville plays his final, most venomous card. He calls a witness Hebert a radical journalist, and Hebert repeats accusations allegedly made by Marie Antoinette's 8-year-old son. The boy, under coaching from his torturers, has claimed his mother committed incest with him. Let that horror settle. They accuse her of sexually abusing her own child, using testimony tortured from an 80-year-old boy in a public courtroom in front of hundreds of people. The room goes silent. Even the bloodthirsty mob seems stunned. Marie Antoinette has remained stoic through every insult, every lie, every threat. But this shatters her. She stands, her voice cracking with emotion she can no longer contain. I appeal to all the mothers present in this room. Is there among you a single one who would not shudder at such an accusation? She's not speaking to the judges anymore. She's speaking directly to the women in the crowd, mothers, daughters, sisters. For the first time in the trial, she's not defending herself as a queen. She's speaking as a mother whose child has been weaponized against her. Nature itself refuses to respond to such a charge made against a mother. I appeal to all mothers who are listening to me. The courtroom erupts. Some women who came to jeer at her execution are moved to tears. Even some revolutionary officials shift uncomfortably. It's too much, too cruel. But Fouquier-Tinville doesn't care. He steamrolls through the rest of the trial. At 4 o'clock in the morning on October 16th, after less than 2 days with no real evidence, Marie Antoinette is found guilty of high treason. The sentence, death by guillotine. Execution scheduled for later that same day. She's given a few hours to prepare for death. Back in her cell, with dawn approaching and death only hours away, Marie Antoinette is finally given pen, paper, and ink. She doesn't write a political manifesto. She doesn't curse the revolution. She doesn't beg for mercy. She writes a letter to her sister-in-law, Madame Elizabeth, still imprisoned with her daughter. It is to you, sister, that I write for the last time. I have just been condemned not to a shameful death that is only for criminals, but to rejoin your brother. Innocent like him, I hope to show the same firmness in my last moments. I am calm, as one is when one's conscience reproaches one with nothing. I deeply regret having to abandon my poor children. You know that I lived only for them and for you. She pours every ounce of remaining love onto that page. She forgives her enemies. She asks pardon for any wrongs she committed. She begs for her children to be cared for. May my son never forget his father's last words, which I expressly repeat to him. Let him never seek to avenge our death. For pages of love, grief, and grace. She signs it simply, Marie Antoinette. Here's the devastating truth. The letter was never delivered. Her jailers intercepted it, and it vanished into a revolutionary archive. Madame Elizabeth never read it. Neither did her daughter. The letter wasn't discovered until decades later, long after everyone Marie Antoinette loved was dead. Her final words to her family died in silence. October 16, 1793, 11 o'clock in the morning, the executioner's assistant enters her cell. Every step now is designed to strip away the final remnants of identity. She's ordered to remove her black mourning gown and put on a plain white chemise uniform of the condemned. She asks to change in private. The guard refuses. She undresses in front of the men who've been watching her for months. Her white, brittle hair is crudely hacked off with shears. No ceremony, no care. Just rough hands and sharp blades cutting away one of her last physical dignities. Her hands are tied behind her back with coarse rope, so tight it cuts into her wrists. She flinches. "You did not bind my husband's hands like this," she says quietly. The guard ignores her. She expects a closed carriage, the small mercy her husband received. Instead, there's a rough wooden cart called a tumberlikind, used to transport animal carcasses. She's forced to climb in and sit on a plank, hands bound, exposed to all of Paris. As the cart lurches forward, thousands line the route, screaming, jeering, spitting, throwing garbage. One man sits at a window, sketching furiously. Jacques-Louis David, the revolutionary artist who voted for her death. His drawing survives a thin, hollow-eyed woman sitting rigidly upright, her face a mask of grim dignity as the world howls for her blood. The journey takes over an hour of public humiliation designed to destroy whatever remains of her spirit. It doesn't work. At 12:15, the cart stops at the guillotine. The crowd roars. Marie Antoinette climbs the scaffold steps without assistance, her legs shaking but her head held high. And then, in the final moment of her life, something extraordinary happens. As she walks toward the plank, she accidentally steps on the executioner's foot. She stops, turns to him, and speaks her last words. "Pardon me, sir. I did not mean to do it." An apology to the man about to kill her. A bizarre, surreal act of courtesy, the final reflex of a life lived under royal protocol. But it's more than that. It's a choice. In the face of absolute degradation, she chooses grace. 20 seconds later, the blade falls. The French Revolution wanted to destroy Marie Antoinette, the symbol, the Austrian woman, the wasteful queen, the embodiment of royal excess. For 76 days, they subjected her to unimaginable psychological torture. They weaponized her own child against her. They stripped her of every dignity, every comfort, every shred of privacy. They accused her of the most heinous crimes. They dragged her through Paris like an animal to slaughter. And in the end, they failed. Because in their obsession with breaking the queen, they accidentally revealed the human being underneath. A mother who fought like hell for her children. A woman who faced monstrous accusations with courage. A person who, even on the steps of the guillotine, held on to her humanity. They wanted her remembered as the widow Capet, a traitor who deserved everything she got. Instead, history remembers Marie Antoinette, a woman who endured 76 days of calculated cruelty and still found the grace to apologize to her executioner. That's the part they couldn't take from her. Not the blade, not the torture, not the propaganda. In the end, she chose who she would be in her final moment, and that choice echoes louder than the guillotine ever could.